Good morning and happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy Football Today, DFS. As always, I'm joined by Meg Shoup and Mike McClure. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a 11-game slate. Last week it was 10 games. We try to keep the show really kind of at a rapid pace, so I think we should get right into it. Again, 11-game slate, 8 games at 1 o'clock, 3 at 4 o'clock. We're going to be giving out our favorite plays in each game, our cheat sheets, and then Mike McClure's top 3 at each position. Get in the chat, smash the like button like Richie Smalls already has, and Josh Lucero and Chris Serrano. Thanks for being in here. And by the way, we're about to put our FFT DFS Week 11 contest in the chat. It's only $5. Click on the link. It'll be in the chat. It'll be in the YouTube description, the podcast description. So many ways that you can access that. Get into our 200-person contest. All right, let's get started. We've got a contest between the Packers and the Bears. Maybe not the most exciting game from a DFS standpoint. Obviously, a lot of turmoil in Chicago. Packers, Mike, I'm going to start with you. I don't think I really want to be involved in this game. It's a relatively low total. There's a lot more games that I'm very much interested in. Anything showing up, Packers, Bears?
I think the Packers defense and special teams could be an interesting look here. But yeah, that's mostly all I can get to as far as like skill position players. That's what I was trying to look through. I'm not really getting anything. I think if you want to take a shot on Josh Jacobs, that's fine. But as we'll talk about later throughout the show, there are a ton of higher end running back options that I think are just in such smash spots that I can't get there, but it wouldn't shock me if we get a Jacobs game of 70 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he ultimately gets there.
Yeah, Meg, I get that argument. I think it's interesting from a contrarian standpoint to consider DeAndre Swift at 6,600. But if I'm being honest, there's so many high-end good running back plays. I just can't imagine I get there unless it's like a bigger contest. I'm out on really all Bears. Anything in this game that you like before we move on to maybe a more exciting game from a DFS standpoint?
Yeah, I echo what you and Mike both said. Really not a ton of interest in this game. Maybe you could make a case for Josh Jacobs. Again, wouldn't be surprised there. And I like Mike's call on the Packers defense. But other than that, there's just too many, as you guys both said, great high-end running back spots.
Okay, well, let's move on then. Let's move on to a game that, isn't going to have a lot of DFS appeal, but maybe it should, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it will. Jacksonville at Detroit. It's a 47-point total. Implied totals here is probably the important thing. 30 for the Detroit Lions. We know their portfolio is largely diversified, right? There's so many different targets, 2 different running backs. And then you look on the Jaguars side, we've got issues at the quarterback, obviously, but running backs, some health issues. Brian Thomas, still some health issues. I can't even see like a value play I'd want to play on that side of the ball in a negative game script. But Meg, maybe you disagree. Is there anybody in this game that you like? I got to be honest. I think David Montgomery at 6,500, an interesting contrarian play. Your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I would agree with you on David Montgomery as a contrarian play because I see Gibbs coming in with higher ownership, obviously. But again, like you said, their portfolios are so large. They're going to score. Who is it? We don't know. So I think I like the Montgomery contrarian call for sure. But you could go down, and if you feel like the passing game gets there, Jamison Williams, I don't think I'm not going to pay up for Amon-Ra because there are too many other pay up spots that I like. And he really hasn't, smashed this year. He hasn't had these like ceiling outcome games because their portfolio of players and studs is so large. So not going to get there. And like you said, don't see anything on the Jaguars side. I do like that David Montgomery contrarian call out, but other than that, not much.
Yeah, Mike, this is interesting because as much as I want to play Jared Goff at home indoors against a terrible team, Tim Patrick, Khalif Raymond, even those guys get involved. Sam Laporta now fully integrated into this offense. Anybody on the Detroit side? And is there a value play on Jacksonville or do we move on?
I'm mostly moving on. I would say that I think this is an interesting spot to full on onslaught the Lions if you can just get it right. But I think you're only doing that in 20 plus entries, right? So like if you're playing 1 to 5, you're definitely not. I do like the Montgomery call. The running back usage really is kind of game script dependent. If you think the other team can push, it's clearly play Jahmyr Gibbs. If it's a game that they win comfortably, it's definitely play Montgomery. You look the last 2 weeks, great example. Against the Texans in that competitive game, Gibbs 19 carries, 11 for Montgomery. Exactly flipped the week before against the Packers, 19 or 18 for Montgomery, only 11 to 12 for Gibbs. So I lean towards Montgomery. The issue that I run into, like if I'm playing Montgomery, it's because I've got 3 running backs, right? You're almost definitely playing If you're playing Montgomery, you're playing in one of the running back spots with another one, maybe CMC in the flex in the late game. That's the only thing I could get here.
So that's a good way of sort of opening the door on some of these running backs that are going to be really good cash game plays and really good tournament plays. You mentioned CMC, Alvin Kamara, Breece Hall. Like CMC, Alvin Kamara, you look at their combo lines, they're almost like identical. It's in that 107, 108 total yards for those guys. But right behind them, Breece Hall, Devin Achane, Jonathan Taylor a little bit lower, Kyron Williams. All of those guys I just mentioned, their combo lines, the sports books, are 100 plus. So they're all going to be highly involved in their game scripts. It kind of makes playing guys like David Montgomery a little bit more difficult. Richie Small says, can you play both in your lineup, Sonic and Knuckles? Of course, referring to Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I think there are situations where you can do that, but not this week. I think I'm probably going to get some head nods from Meg and Mike on that one. This isn't the time to do that. I think if you're playing smaller slates and you see Detroit, I think you can do that in maybe a more competitive game. I will say this about David Montgomery. They started out with Jahmyr Gibbs pretty heavy early in that game against the Texans. I don't know that we see that. And by the way, they kind of got away from Jahmyr was fine, but they kind of got away from their identity a little bit. Obviously, they fell behind pretty big. I could see David Montgomery starting and finishing this game with a little bit more of a role than he did at the beginning last week. But that's part of the reason I like him at 6,500 in the leadoff role, but in the cleanup role as well. All right, Raiders, Dolphins, pretty low total. But again, we look at implied totals, right? It's low because the Raiders probably aren't going to be scoring much. The Dolphins, 25.5-point total. Mike, Tyreek Hill is always on our radar, obviously dealing with a wrist injury, dealing with some inconsistency at the quarterback position. I think everyone is going to look at this game and say, give me Devin Achane and let me get out. What's your take?
Yeah, I like Achane here. He didn't have the best game in the last game, and it was really just the receiving yardage that lacked, and obviously not finding the end zone. Caught all 5 of the targets, but only 15 yards. Now, some of that was, I believe there was a 10-yard negative play in there that really hurt. But when you look at that spot, you got to still be encouraged with the volume because it really didn't change as much as we thought it might with Tyreek being back in there. So I personally like Achane. I think that he at 72, like it's interesting compared to some of the other backs, but it is enough of a discount from Kamara and CMC that I think he's really, really close to those two in terms of value.
Meg, are you in on Achane this week? And is there anybody else on the Miami side you'd speculate on? I'll probably won't be on Tyreek Hill. I mean, Mike, you're famous for saying like guys like Tyreek Hill, they can go off at any moment. So if ownership's going to be down, Tyreek Hill could suddenly have that 150-yard, 2-touchdown game. With that said, for me, it's Devin Achane. Anybody on the other side? Jacoby Myers, 5,600. I'm not interested in the running backs. I doubt you are either. Brock Bowers, 5,800. What do we like?
Yeah, I'll agree with you guys on Achane. Like we talked about, there are so many of those spend up running backs that we need to decide between. He is one of them. So definitely like Achane in this spot. The other one I'll throw out on Miami's side is Jonnu Smith. He's much more involved in the passing game than he has been. And my theme this week is going to be, because we talked about expensive running backs, we like cheap tight end. So yeah. I like tight ends 4K and under. He falls into that bucket. And actually, Raiders it's a good matchup for tight end. So, and again, he's been a lot more involved, kind of almost replacing Waddle. So I'll throw out Jonnu as my cheap tight end option.
I think that's a great call at 3,800. Definitely somebody you can mix into your lineups. All right, let's move on. Again, a lot of exciting games that I'll probably talk about more in depth, but they kind of come down the line here. Vikings at the Titans. Probably not one we're going to get super involved with, Meg. I mean, this is a 39.5-point total. Vikings have been slipping a little bit. Not necessarily the best matchup against a formidable Titans defense. I'll point out Calvin Ridley had a nice game last week, but I don't know that we can expect a ton of consistency there. So I look at the Vikings side. Aaron Jones, a little hobbled. This is one of those games I think I just might mark off my sheet, so to speak. I'm not interested. How about you?
No, I'm not really interested either. I mean, of course you can, just like we talk about all the studs, you can always make a case for Justin Jefferson. So, and if he's coming in at low ownership, that's interesting, but I don't think I'll likely get there this week. You could also make a case for Calvin Ridley, but his price is kind of creeping up that I don't think I'll go there against this Vikings defense either. So, I see it, but I don't think I'll get there on either.
Mike, any thoughts on Calvin Ridley at 6,200 or really anybody in this game?
So Ridley's interesting. Like he could definitely make your player pool. The problem is you don't want to stack with Ridley, right? So you're not stacking that. It's a standalone play, but the price point is appropriate at 6,200. He's clearly playing like a $7,000 receiver. I think the best comp that I could make is probably George Pickens. So Pickens, I know he gets Baltimore, but Pickens' salary right at $7K. That's kind of where Ridley should be with the upside that he represents. And the thing about Ridley, I think that they could find themselves in a game script that gets him there. But man, I don't feel great about it. I don't want to do it, but I'm not going to fault you at all at 6,200. It does make a lot of sense. And he does still have multiple touchdown upside. Like Calvin Ridley in any matchup, we're talking, it's not 10 catches, but we're talking 6-7 receptions, 80 to 100 yards and 2 touchdowns is very, very much in the range of outcomes here.
Well, speaking a lot of touchdowns, receptions, and perhaps interceptions, I got to point out, because this will be the next game that we end up getting to, Jeffrey Lightsey says, I'm not going to miss the 500 passing yards, 3 touchdown, 4 interception week from Jameis this week. Actually, that's the next game we're going to tackle. I do want to mention that if you're watching us on Twitter and you want to jump into this chat, just go to the Fantasy Football Today YouTube channel and you can jump in just like Jeffrey Lightsey, Kirk Schroyer, and some of these others are in terms of asking questions and making comments. So again, if you're watching us on Twitter, that's great. You can keep watching us on Twitter, or you can jump into the YouTube channel on Fantasy Football Today and join the team, join the chat here. All right, we got to get to that Browns-Saints game because it's obviously got a lot of interest for a lot of different reasons. We're going to do it right after this message from our partners.
Saturdays at 3:30, it's big time. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, we're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. I'm joined by Meg Shoup and Mike McClure every single Thursday at 11 o'clock. We go through the entire main slate, little touch on showdown at the end of the show for Eagles, Commanders, and of course, Mike gives out his top 3 at the end of the show, and Meg and I give out our cheat sheets. But involved in that cheat sheet, perhaps, is a little Jameis Winston action. He's one of those names where when you say his name, I think it just brings a smile to people's face, whether they like him in DFS or not. It's still like there's certain things that like bring a smile to my face. Anytime Jameis Winston comes up in conversation, it does. He's only 5,500. Cedric Tillman, a guy that we've been touting before it was cool to tout him, at 5,300. David Njoku, 5,500. I mean, there's a lot of options. Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, cheaper options here. And then on the other side, a healthy Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara is going to be really popular at 8,200. There's a lot to consider here. Taysom Hill at 4,500. Meg, I'm going to start with you. How are you playing this one?
Oh, absolutely love Jameis this week to Cedric Tillman. I don't really like spending up on tight end, but Njoku would be in my player pool for sure. So absolutely love that on the Brown side. If you want to get more contrarian, I do think you could even consider Nick Chubb here. Listen, the Falcons lost this game, but they put up over 500 yards of offense. They just didn't convert a lot. The Saints still give it up in every way, running game, passing game. So I do think you could look to Nick Chubb, but I absolutely love the passing game, and we'll definitely have some Jameis Winston, Tillman, potentially Njoku stacks. And then on the Saints side, I mean, Kamara is always obviously in play with his volume. So there's definitely in the player pool is one of those top end running backs to consider.
I like Jameis Winston a lot. My 3 favorite stacks going into this show, and it always changes because Meg, I listen to you, I listen to Mike, and injury news and value kind of springs up sometimes after this show. But I'm just going to come out with it since we don't have our Hellman stack to give out. I like Jameis and Cedric Tillman. That's one of my stacks. Brock Purdy to Juwan Jennings. That was mine last week. I'm going right back to it. Although we'll talk about that San Francisco game because I think you can play Brock Purdy naked. I think you can play him with CMC, Debo, Kittle, whatever you want to do. And Drake May to Kayshon Boutte is actually one that is so cost effective, especially when we're talking about expensive running backs, that's something I'm interested in as well. But I lay that all out for you, Mike, because I included obviously Jameis Winston in this. Are we potentially, I mean, this is the Saints defense, which is bad, banged up on the back end. Is the community at large overvaluing this spot for Jameis Winston, or is it all systems go?
It's all systems go for me. It's mostly a price point thing too, right? He's super cheap and he's got a great stacking partner with upside that's also cheap. So it allows you to build whatever you want. So I'll preface everything I'm about to say on Jameis by reading you the rest of some of this lineup that I've just got sitting in front of me. Mm-hmm. Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Devon Achane, DeAndre Hopkins, any defense you want at 3K or above. All in the same lineup with Jameis Winston to Tillman. So there's just so many options here. But could I interest you in 87 passing attempts in 2 games? Because I'm interested in that. Whether they go for touchdowns or not. Look, if you're going to throw 87, I don't care if 2 of them land in the hands of the defense, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm keep chucking, right? So, in fact, Jameis throwing a pick 6 could be the best thing that would happen here.
That's to say, even better.
Right back on the field. Now you're guaranteed to continue to throw the football. So, you have to separate real life football from DFS when it comes to some of this stuff. He's going to be extremely popular, right? So what your job is going to be is, can you get different enough and have enough upside everywhere else in your lineup? That's going to be the challenge. I personally think that I can with some of the stances I want to take elsewhere. So I love Jameis. I'm playing him. You can stack him with Tillman. You can stack him with Moore. You can stack him with Njoku. Tillman is definitely the obvious piece. Now, when I say getting different, like the most common piece here is going to be Jameis, Tillman, and Kamara, right? Yeah. So maybe if you want to take the stance on not playing either Tillman or Kamara, obviously big bring back. He's got big volume. But those are ways you'd want to look to start getting different. But yeah, there's no way that I'm not playing some Jameis this week.
Cousin Ernest says, hi, Meg, Mike, and Sia. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for being in here, and thanks for the compliment. Hit the like button and maybe review the podcast if you could on Spotify or Apple. Appreciate everybody being in here. Mike, can I ask you something? So if it's not Alvin Kamara, because I think this is a game where having a run back option makes sense. It doesn't always make sense, but Taysom Hill has my interest. I don't know that I'm going back to MVS, but he's only 4,400, so I don't hate that play. If you're playing Kamara as a run back, I think you can play maybe an additional person, or you could just get out of Alvin Kamara and just go contrarian with somebody else. Is there another Saint that you like? And Meg, I'm going to ask you the same question.
For me, there's not. If you want to take shots in MVS, sure, got big upside. Taysom clearly has upside and a pretty big negative correlation with Kamara, so I don't mind it. The way I would elect to do it personally is there's a number of great plays on this slate. So if I'm looking to get a little different, I'm just not going to have a bring back here personally. And then if you're really worried about it, bet Taysom Hill anytime touchdown. I mean, there's no path to Taysom Hill hurting you without him scoring, right? Because of the volume, there's no path. So if you're super worried about it, I think it's the best option here.
Alvin Kamara is going to get his touches, Meg, but I do like the negative correlation part where you just skip out on Alvin Kamara. You pay up for a different running back and you play Taysom Hill and just hope somehow he gets 1 or 2 touchdowns near the goal line. Any thoughts on Taysom or anybody else on the Saints side?
I totally get the case for Taysom. I personally like cheaper tight ends more that I think I'm going to get to, just to then obviously again, what it allows you to do in your lineup situation. So don't know that I'll do it, but I totally get the case for Taysom. So I'm kind of with Mike. Don't see myself forcing a run back in this situation, even though I love the Jameis side.
Okay. We all love the Jameis side. Let's go to another side, Meg, that I think you liked quite a bit. So we're going to start with you. Ravens at the Steelers. Ravens given 3 points. Both these teams, pretty high total here, 48 points, 26 points or so, 23 points for the Steelers in terms of implied totals. Meg, I know you like a stack in this game.
Yes, I do. I absolutely love Russell Wilson to George Pickens. And listen, we know to attack the Baltimore Ravens secondary. We saw it on Thursday night. I'm not saying he's going to put up Joe Burrow numbers, but let's make no mistake. Since Russ has started, he's been putting up really good numbers. I believe above 260 and 2 touchdowns, at least in all 3 games, I believe. He's putting up the numbers, and I think he could absolutely exceed that. You can't run on the Ravens. I know the Steelers like to be run heavy, but they're a very smart coaching staff. So I think they'll lean into the strengths and lean into those beautiful moon balls from Russ to Pickens. So I'm in on that. You can even throw Mike Williams or, a cheaper other pass option if you want to double stack it, because we know Russ doesn't have much running, upside anymore. But again, those beautiful moon balls are there, and I'm all over Russ and Pickens and potentially another third pass catcher.
Mike, I understand the argument for stacking this game, playing Russ, Lamar, Pickens, Zay. I got to be honest, though. I look at this total. I think it's a little high for this division matchup where these teams really know each other.
Yeah.
I kind of like the under, and if so much ownership is going to come in here, because I think Meg's right about her analysis on Russell Wilson. I think people have seen George Pickens enough lately to want to play him. Zay Flowers' ownership looks to be way higher than I thought it would, to be honest with you. Maybe that curbs as we go through the week. I don't necessarily mind getting off of this game. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest in this game outside of Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews at 4,600. You can sign me up for some of that in this particular matchup. So when I look at everything in this game, like Pickens has been phenomenal. Russ has been phenomenal. I think the clock's going to be moving here. And I could be very wrong on the Russ to Pickens thing. Like it's got a ton of upside. At 7K, I'm probably out on Pickens, and he would fall simply into that category where if the ownership steams high enough, where I would have to bet his anytime touchdown as a hedge. Again, I think he's another player that is unlikely to pay off his price tag without a touchdown. It's very possible he gets there on volume, but he's mostly getting there on big play volume. He's had 9 targets against the Jets. Only doing some of the stuff on 5 or 7 targets. So for me, that's my only concern here. But as far as pieces in this game, the only thing I'm getting to is Mark Andrews.
Meg, if you're playing Russ and George Pickens, are you forcing a run back here like a Mark Andrews or a Zay, or even maybe an expensive Derrick Henry? Or is this one of those situations where you just grab those 2 pieces on the Pittsburgh side and you get out?
I'm not forcing it by any means, but I will consider Mark Andrews, and I'm also going to consider Derrick Henry. We've learned this, been playing DFS for 10 plus years. You play Derrick Henry when he's low owned, and he looks to be incredibly low owned this week because we don't know when he could pop off for 102 any given week. Again, we know he's very game script dependent, but he's not really matchup dependent. He can bust off an 80-yard run at any given moment. So it looks like he's coming in sub 5% owned. So I do find that interesting. Now there is going to be opportunity cost if he doesn't get there. It's going to hurt bad. So you need him to get all the way there with probably, again, 102. But again, it's always in Derrick Henry's range of outcomes and in his bag, especially if, somehow Baltimore gets out ahead and Steelers are then playing from behind, and that works to my favor of that script. So I'm considering just because of the ownership situation.
It's the Tyreek Hill argument all over again. Like these guys, regardless of the matchup, have the potential to go for 2 touchdowns and 100+ yards. And if everybody's like, well, Keaton Mitchell's back, it's a tough matchup, division, Henry's not going to get a certain number of yards or touchdown looks, like that's when in tournaments, at least, you're going to want to consider guys like that because everybody else is too shy to play them. All right, let's go to the Rams and the Patriots. I kind of chuckle to myself because I just mentioned that Mike, I kind of like the Drake May 5,600, Kayshon Boutte 3,500. Now I'll concede I like the Jameis Winston one a little bit better, but if I'm tying Drake May to Kayshon Boutte, he's 3,500, whereas Cedric Tillman's 5,300. I think I might be trying to get like too cute here, and maybe I just need to come off of this one. But there is the potential that the Rams play from, the lead this whole game, and we're looking at Drake May running and passing. I think you could play Drake May naked as well. Am I way off base here?
No, you're not. I'm not going to do it, but I'm, as you guys know, I'm extremely stubborn in the way I play. Like I play a very narrow player pool, and I'm not going to include anything here personally, other than Kyren Williams. Kyren Williams, I think, is one of the best pivots to Alvin Kamara on this slate. I think that he's going to be heavily involved here in this particular matchup. So I think the Rams should take care of business. It's an outdoor game. I just think they feed him the ball. What was encouraging, despite his production, they were terrible in that game against Miami. He got involved in the passing game a bit there. So he does, that does change things a little bit for me. So I like Kyren Williams quite a bit here. Would be a direct pivot for Kamara for me.
Okay. Meg, I want to ask you about, Ramondre's 6,100. For the record, Kayshon Boutte, it's a little speculative on my part, but you look at the targets since Drake May has played in games. He's getting, I think, 6 targets a game. He's catching a handful of them. I think it's almost like a poor man Cedric Tillman situation where there is upside there, and he is getting at least enough volume to potentially have a decent enough floor. And he's 3,500, and on a slate where everybody seems so expensive and there's not a ton of value outside of some of the stacks that we talked about. I just think he's interesting to incorporate in the lineup. With all that said, the other side of the ball is Puka Nacua, has Cooper Kupp, Kyren Williams. Is this a game you're interested in? It's only a 43.5 point total. Anybody you're playing?
Yeah, first of all, I don't know that I'll get there, but I don't mind your Drake May call out. I like it, again, because what he's doing with his legs too at that price. So, and then with the Kayshon Boutte, I don't mind that either. Again, just price, and we need to save money. But in this game, the savings I'm really looking at is Davis Allen at tight end, full min price 2.5K. That he seems to we kind of jumped Parkinson as the tight end, got 6 targets on Monday night, and a 2.5K. I don't care if it's chalky. It's what it lets me do. And we've seen a lot of chalky, cheap tight ends help us do what we need to do. And so there's a couple of them that I'm interested in, but he's one of them. And again, I like Mike's call out on Kyren Williams, of course, in this matchup, game script, etc. Definitely interested. So Kyren Williams, Davis Allen, my 2 main plays in this game. And then I don't mind the May stack or just May's solo.
Davis Allen, speculative, but it makes sense. And you're right. He is emerging as the guy that seems to be the tight end one, and he's 2,500. We're trying to find value, right? And I think that is a pretty good play. This game, again, Kayshon Boutte, speculative, 3,500. Davis Allen, a little speculative, 2,500. They make things work that even if they bottom out a little bit, you might have just gathered enough upside at the other positions where it might not matter as much as you think. All right, let's move on to the next game. This is the last 1 o'clock game. Yeah, it is. It's the Colts. Underwhelming. It's the Jets. Underwhelming. We've got a 43.5 point total. Somehow the Jets are favored by 4, which is a little shocking to me. Anthony Richardson playing in this game, which from a DFS standpoint is at least a little interesting. He's only 5,300. I'm more interested, Meg, in Jonathan Taylor at 7,600. I'm going to be over the market on Jonathan Taylor. We know you can run on the Jets. I think he's going to get some passing work as well. And I think Anthony Richardson certainly helps open up some lanes for Jonathan Taylor. I'm not interested in the receivers on that side. Breece Hall, interesting to me on the Jet side. What do you like in this game, Meg?
Yeah, basically both running backs in this game. Actually, Jonathan Taylor, the receivers for the Colts kind of get a downgrade, but Jonathan Taylor gets an upgrade with Richardson back in. So definitely like Jonathan Taylor and Breece Hall. We know you can run on the Colts as well. So I like both the running backs in this game, basically. And that's it.
Okay. Kirk Schroyer says he likes the Jets defense. I could see that. I mean, Anthony Richardson has been a turnover machine, but this Jets defense, Mike, not great. What are we playing in this one?
Yeah, it's Jonathan Taylor for me. Jets down to 28th in the NFL in terms of EPA per play against the rush. Jonathan Taylor should be locked in for 20 plus touches in this game still. So I know there's always going to be some concern about touchdown equity at the goal line when you've changed to the mobile quarterback. But for me, I think that Jonathan Taylor gets one, and it may not come from inside the 20.
Do you end up getting there with Breece Hall? I mean, I'm sure he's in your player pool, but I can't imagine, we're going to do your top 3 running backs. I can't imagine Breece is in your top 3, right?
So he's not in the top 3. I don't mind it. I don't think he's touching the football 25 times, and I think there are 3 running backs that are on this slate, so maybe 4. So I'm not anxious to get him in there. I think it's fine. I think the game's going to be competitive, and it's at the point in the season where if the Jets go down, the Jets are going down with the football in Aaron Rodgers' hands. So if you want to be speculative and bet is, over 3.5 or 4.5 receptions, I think that's fine. But I don't love him in DFS this week.
Okay. Yeah. A lot of other great running backs to consider, including the one we're going to get to in my favorite game, San Francisco and Seattle. We're gonna break that game down. That's our 4 o'clock slate. We have 3 games there that we get to our cheat sheets, and of course, Mike's top 3 at each position. But let's hear a message from our partners first.
Welcome to JJ's.
I'll have wait, there's no way I can get a burger?
No chance. But you can have the NFL on CBS streams live on Paramount Plus. Oh, hang on. There's a toy.
We're back on Fantasy Football Today, DFS. We go to the 4 o'clock slate, 4:05. Reminder, if you haven't signed up for the DFS contest, it's in the link. It'll be in the podcast description as well. It's only $5, a 200-person DFS contest. The top 20 get paid out. And another reminder, if you're watching us on Twitter and you want to jump into the chat, go to the Fantasy Football Today YouTube channel and jump in. Hit the like button. I'm sure you're already subscribed to this channel, as so many are. All right, Seattle at San Francisco. This is a pretty big spread, but it makes sense, right? The Niners favored by around 6.5. It's a 48-point total. The Niners implied for around 27 points. Mike, I start with you. My favorite stack in this game is Brock Purdy to kind of anyone, but I'll just pick the cheap guy and Juwan Jennings at 5,300. I think you can play Brock Purdy naked with Christian McCaffrey, however you want to play it. Obviously, some run backs in play, including DK Metcalf, who was healthy. How are we playing this game, Mike?
Yeah, I'm playing Purdy. He's definitely one of the top 3 QBs for me. I'm playing McCaffrey in nearly every lineup. It's all systems go. They've got to win all these games. This is the most important game, frankly. And I'm most excited about him in the passing game. You watch that Tampa game. I know Tampa sometimes can be a bit of a pass funnel, but that's where he's going to be most effective. I know he's always been good running between the tackles and just anywhere, but how you win with Christian McCaffrey is getting him the football in space and letting him work his magic. So for me, every Purdy lineup actually includes McCaffrey. And then I will have a couple with Debo and then a couple with Jennings. But I think this is a decent Debo Samuel week.
Meg, we like to play the afternoon slate, right? And a lot of people do, but a lot of people just aren't aware of it. They've got a main slate, sort of one-track mind situation going. It's a 3-game afternoon slate, and I haven't made the lineup yet. I don't even know if the afternoon slate's available quite yet. It probably is, but I'm going to be playing, like Mike said, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Juwan Jennings. I mean, that's getting a little expensive. I'll have a run back. And then I'll probably play some low-end options, which we're going to get to in this Falcons-Broncos game. And I might even just be completely out on the afternoon slate in Chiefs-Bills. We'll talk about why later. I just love this Niners side. Do you love it as much as we do? And are you playing anybody on the Seattle side?
Yeah, I absolutely love the Niners side. I love approaching it with the late slate, just onslaughting the Niners, onslaughting this game if you want. So yeah, definitely all over. Purdy's in my top 3 quarterbacks as well. Love the Purdy stacks. You can mix them up, as Mike said. Do like Jennings as the cheapest option and do like CMC in all of them. And I think CMC is the chalk buy this week. Absolutely love him in this matchup. You can certainly attack Seattle with the running backs on the ground or in the passing game. And we saw how involved he was in the passing game. And again, there was like no slow ramp up for him. He's back. He is fully back. So very excited about playing McCaffrey this week.
Okay, on the Seattle side, DK Metcalf, my eyes are like getting big right now. 6,500. I'm assuming he's fully healthy, and that's a dangerous assumption, but is he going to be the key run back? JSN also 6,500. If I'm choosing between the two, now that DK is healthy, I'm going that direction. I'll mention Tyler Lockett, 5,800. AJ Barner, 3,100. Noah Fant, 3,700. And then Kenneth Walker, 7K. Are you going to, and Mike, I'm going to ask you the same question. Are you going to have a run back in this game, or are you just going to kind of stay away from all of that?
So I'm not forcing run backs here. To me, there's a wide range here. I honestly, I think San Francisco could win this game by double digits, to be honest with you. The thing about it is I like San Francisco. It's go time for them. They've got to win these games. And just having CMC back, I think that they're going to be able to really keep that Seattle defense on the field for a long time and ultimately wear them down. So I think they score 30+ points in this game. And I'm mostly focused there without the bring back. But again, it's mostly price points and mostly some of the other players that I want to play. So I'm not going to be running bringbacks here. Can't fault you if you want to, but I don't have any bringbacks currently.
Meg, any bringbacks for you?
Main slate, no. 4 p.m., yes. Because again, 4 p.m., I think you can just onslaught this game.
Yeah. Okay.
And it would be DK Metcalf for me. You could also do Walker. I actually, and this was a Thursday night game. I was able to hit a parlay late with a Walker receptions and over his receiving yards. And it was super fun because they ended up targeting him like a total of 8 or 9 times that game. So we know Gino's going to be throwing a lot. He's going to have to. Don't know that I'll get to that side, but you can certainly incorporate Walker, Metcalf in those 4 o'clock onslaught.
If you do same game parlays, I think this is a really good environment to get involved in some overs. I'll tell you right now, a bet I'm going to give out on CBS Sports Network at 12 o'clock today. We're going to be on talking a lot of NFL. So I like Brock Purdy over 1.5 touchdowns. The problem is it's minus 150. Generally, I'm not trying to pay minus 150. But if you parlay that with San Francisco money line, you're getting like plus 110. Again, I'm not a parlay guy. I don't love doing stuff like that necessarily. But if I really love the over 1.5 touchdown passes, certainly correlated with San Francisco winning. And I think they're going to win regardless of whether he gets that prop or not. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to address a question in the chat real quick. Would I play Debo and CMC alone? So yes, kind of. I would play either. I'm going to play CMC without Purdy a lot. I'll play Debo without Purdy. I would not play both of them together without Purdy. Now, that might sound like, obviously, but there are guys that we'll talk about later that I would. So I'll give you a little spoiler. Like, I think you can get away with playing Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins without Patrick Mahomes because of where the volume is and their price points. But because of the price points on CMC and Debo, you are needing way more ceiling to where you do want Purdy there. So I would play them individually without him, but not together without him.
Great question, Jeffrey. Great insight from Mike McClure. Cooler Hand says Ramondre is greater than Brees this week. Also $1,400 cheaper. I wanted to get to that comment. Thank you for making those comments, Cooler Hand. All right, let's get to, before we get to that Bills Kansas City game, let's get to the Falcons and the Broncos. I like the Broncos. I put this pick out on Sportsline. I got the Broncos money line on Monday at -120. That's grown. The line has grown to -2.5, 44-point total. I think Bo Nix is interesting if you want to get contrarian on like an afternoon slate, Meg. But my favorite play in this game, because I don't think Atlanta offense is going to play very well. Bijan Robinson will be probably pretty contrarian this week relative to some of the other running backs we talked about. But Audric Estime, yes, speculative. But if you have to force in a low-end running back, he would be the one to force in. He's only 4,500, and it looks like maybe, not definitely, but maybe he's taken over that running back position in terms of getting the bulk of the carries. Do you like that? And is there anything in this game that you like?
Yeah, those were the two main ones that I had written down, the two running backs, Bijan Robinson, if you're paying up, Audric Estime, if you just need salary saving at the running back position, because he kind of somewhat took it over last week, having, I believe, over 50% of the rush of the carries. So I definitely have interest in Estime just again for what it allows you to do. Hopefully he gets those goal line carries and gets in the end zone to help you there.
Mike, any interest in Estime? And is this a scratch-off game? Or, I mean, listen, the Falcons offense, if they're the Falcons offense, which I don't think they will be against Denver, mainly because of their pass rush and their back end, a guy like Bijan Robinson could go off. Drake London, Darnell Mooney. I mean, Mooney's 6,600. I just have no interest on that Atlanta side. How about you?
Yeah, I've been no interest here. It's total no play in this game for me.
Okay, so Estime probably out. Too speculative.
Yeah, for me personally, but again, I'm playing Christian McCaffrey in every single lineup. So
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, Estime with that Broncos defense could be an interesting look. Just throwing that out there. All right, let's get to Kansas City, Buffalo. Again, I kind of mentioned, Mike, I'm not super interested in this game. We'll have to see how the receiver position shakes out on the Buffalo side, because it could be like the Mac Hollins show at 3,800. We know Keon Coleman's not playing. I don't think Dalton Kincaid is playing, but I guess we have to wait for more news on that. Amari Cooper's still banged up. I'm guessing him and Shakir are playing, but either way, I'm just not super interested. I'm not interested in Cook against this rush defense on Kansas City. And I don't think I'm getting to the other side either, because I respect this Bills defense. What say you, Kansas City, Buffalo?
Yeah, I think we are definitely opposite here. I am extremely optimistic on Kansas City's offense, but mostly because I think the game's going to be very competitive. And it wouldn't shock me if Kansas City's trailing. And we haven't really seen too much of that, right? But it's a volume play at this point. Number one, Travis Kelce is the biggest free square of the entire week. At 6,300, Travis Kelce, the last 3 games since the injuries that have really plagued this team, right? 12, 16, and 12. That is 13.3 targets a game. That is wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Fun fact, Justin Jefferson only has 1 game of double-digit targets this season.
Wow.
1. There's no one else remotely close in the NFL, particularly on this slate, in terms of target volume for Travis Kelce. He is, for me, he grades out as an $8,500 player. You can play him at 6,300 because he is a tight end. Patrick Mahomes, got to talk about him as well. Again, competitive game. That's where you want him. 42, 44, and 38 are the pass attempts the last 3 games. That is 41 passing attempts per game. We talked about Jameis Winston, 87 over the last 2. Not all passing attempts are created equally. Patrick Mahomes is still a better quarterback than Jameis. And then the Buffalo side, I think all the bringbacks, right? So I am with you. I think Kincaid is not going to play. And if he does, he's not going to finish this game. He was in brutal shape in that last one. So I love Dawson Knox, who is a great receiving tight end. They've had troubles with him in some of the run game. That's really what's kept him off the field at times. And then I like Curtis Samuel here as well. He, to me, projects as someone that could rack up points in a back and forth game. So I think Buffalo has no shot running the football against Kansas City. And I think that's fine, because I think they're going to let them put the game on Josh Allen's shoulders. He's going to throw the ball, 40 times in this game, probably. So I like all the cheap Buffalo pieces as bringbacks, but Kelsey and Hopkins, just absolute locks to me.
Curtis Samuel, 3,300. Dawson Knox, 3,500. Well, Meg, listen, part of the reason I love this show is because, first of all, I mean, I will say Mike is a guru in general, but certainly is close to the Kansas City situation as a big fan of that team. But those stats don't lie, right? Like, that's pretty impressive that it grades out at 8,500, but he's only 6,300, and it makes sense because of the targets. Are you, I guess I'm in on Travis Kelce now. Are you in on Travis Kelce? And do you like anything else in this game?
It would have to be a 2 tight end build for me. And obviously you can treat him like a receiver. So yes, if you're treating Kelce like a receiver, then yes. But other than that, no, not really. I think this is going to be an amazing, obviously it's the real life game. There's actually a few good real life games that we're all excited about this week, but this is the real life game that everybody's watching. Fantasy wise, prop betting wise, I don't know that it's really got me very excited. So I don't know that I'll get to much other than if you wanted to treat Kelce like a receiver. And Dawson Knox, I talked about, I want to play cheap tight ends. The other cheap tight end outside of Davis Allen was Dawson Knox. The only way you can really attack the Chiefs, or the best way to attack the Chiefs, is tight ends are kind of it's like a tight end funnel. And that's the way to get there. So Dawson Knox at 3,000 is a comfortable target for Josh Allen is a look that I like. And I definitely am going to be playing plenty of him just for salary savings.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I would say that's an extension of that is kind of why I like Curtis Samuel the most here. They use him in a number of ways that essentially becomes an extension of the run game. And if they've got some issues with receiver depth down the field, potentially if Cooper doesn't play or if he is banged up, I think that this could be one where they get the ball out quick and we could be seeing a solid game from Curtis Samuel here. Very speculative, obviously, but it comes with a price point of 3,300.
Okay. Let's get to our cheat sheets. Got a few minutes left to cover. Meg, we're going to start with you. Your favorite stack, your chalk buy, chalk fade, contrarian, and value play.
Yes. So my favorite, sorry, I had the wrong page up. My favorite stack I've talked about, Russell Wilson, George Pickens. Let's see that moonball again against this bad Ravens secondary. Chalk buy, Christian McCaffrey. Mike said he's in every lineup. Same for me. Love it. I think he's totally worth the price and the chalk. Chalk fade, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm seeing a lot of ownership on him. Again, he has not really had a ceiling game yet because they just have so many weapons to go to. So my contrarian play is in that same game with Steelers Ravens. And I don't know that I'll do a lot, but I want to make a case for the time you want to play Derrick Henry is when he's under 5% owned. And again, you could still get 102 in this game. Eckler had 2 touchdowns last week. So Derrick Henry would be my contrarian play. And then value, Davis Allen, Dawson Knox, any cheap tight end. There are a few of them under, 3.5K that I'm interested in, those two being the biggest ones.
Okay, we'll get to my cheat sheet. But before we do, Travis Kelce, Kirk Schroyer wants to know, Mike, Travis Kelce has a 6.5 receptions line at -114. Your thoughts on that?
You couldn't talk me into the under for really anything. So yeah, over or nothing there. I would say 6 is going to be the floor, but again, looking at the usage recently, it's 10, 14, and 8 are his last 3 games of receptions.
Amazing. All right, let's get to my cheat sheet. I mentioned it. Purdy to Jennings is where I'm headed. At least that's my primary stack, 6,600 to 5,300. My chalk buy is going to be Jonathan Taylor. He's not super chalky. There's like 3, 4, 5, 6 running backs might be more owned than him, but I really like him at 7,600. Zay Flowers is going to be my chalk fade. I think I'm maybe just kind of getting out of that game in general. My contrarian play is David Montgomery at 6,500. He's going to need a couple touchdowns probably to really hit that ceiling, but I think it's a nice matchup for him to do that, certainly, in a nice game script. And then my value play, I'll go Audric Estimate at 4,500 and Kayshon Boutte at 3,500. All right, Mike, top 3 at each position. We'll start at quarterback.
Brock Purdy, Jameis Winston, and Patrick Mahomes. Brock Purdy, I love the matchup. I don't think Seattle's that good defensively. I think this game just bleeds a lot of yardage and points just when you've got the weapons that San Francisco does. Jameis Winston, it's the price point and the matchup against the Saints. It's the very cheap stack. And just the passing attempts. Again, 87 passing attempts in the last 2 games, the games that he started. And then Patrick Mahomes. 42, 44, 38 are the passing attempts. Great opportunity for Kansas City to lock up the number 1 seed against Buffalo. This is essentially a playoff game. And one where I think the Chiefs can get pushed. Like the Chiefs being behind in this game would be a great thing for Patrick Mahomes and DFS. So I like Purdy, Winston, and Mahomes.
All right. And we have a Chief as one of your running backs, but let's start with Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, CMC to me, another basic free square. Look, he's going to be popular. He's not expensive enough. He's healthy. I love him in this matchup. Devon Achane, number 2. I think I was pretty encouraged despite the result of that game and just not having the passing yardage. I think this is a much different story. I think he has whatever he wants against the Raiders. And then Kareem Hunt, just the volume and the price point. I think he's going to be involved against Buffalo. We've seen him touch the football 20 plus times pretty much every week.
Top 3 receivers.
Cedric Tillman listed number 1, mostly because of the stacking and the price point. I think there are a number of paths to him having a really, really fine game. Number 2, Jacoby Myers. I didn't talk about him too much there, but the volume, he's essentially like Travis Kelce recently. He's getting all the volume. He's getting more volume than Justin Jefferson. I know he's not Justin Jefferson, but I do think that this is a good matchup for him. And I think that he's going to really be involved. And then the price point, he's just so cheap, right? And then number 3, DeAndre Hopkins. Look, more time with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, again, averaging 41 attempts over the last 3 games with this guy in the lineup. Most of these attempts are going to Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins is dangerous in the red zone. Give me DeAndre Hopkins here.
All right. And then finally, we've got another Chief. Let's talk tight ends.
Yeah, big on this Kansas City passing game. Normally, Kansas City, you don't know where some of the usage is going. That's different right now. We know exactly where this football is going in this spot. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, and Dawson Knox. Mark Andrews, this to me projects as a game where he could have some success against the Steelers defense, especially in the play action game if they try and stop the run with Derrick Henry. And then Dawson Knox, I think Buffalo's going to have to throw the football a lot. And I think Kincaid could sit this game.
All right. Well, let's do this in 60 seconds. Meg, Washington plus 3.5 tonight on Thursday Night Football. Do they cover? Do they win?
Unfortunately, I don't think they win tonight. It's been an exciting season for us, but tonight is not the game that I'm siding with our Commanders.
Do they cover though?
I don't think they do.
Fair enough. All right. Hey, that's okay. Mike, if you're playing Showdown.
It bums me out to say it, but
I hear you. If you're playing Showdown, like there are a lot of superstars in this one. I know you probably haven't run your simulations yet, but anybody that's important to your lineups or maybe a particular construction?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you've got so many high-priced players. I think Saquon will have some success. A.J. Brown's clearly going to be very interesting just because of the deep threat that exists. I think we could see some kickers again involved. I like Jake Elliott a little bit in this one. Other plays, let's see. Yeah, I'm mostly going to be way more on Eagles onslaughts than anything.
Yeah, I see your point there. I think A.J. Brown, Jaden Daniels might be captains for me, and then I'll just fill it out from there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Make sure you're subscribed to our Fantasy Football Today DFS podcast. Make sure you subscribe and review if you can. But again, let's have a great Week 11 on behalf of Mike McClure, on behalf of Meg Shoup, and of course, Nada on the ones and twos. My name is Sia Nejad. This is Fantasy Football Today DFS. We'll see you next Thursday, folks.